Hello, Internet. My name is Alan, and welcome back to Mine Mogul. As you guys might remember if you watched the first episode, we just finished making, well, most of the mines here settled. We've still got a few to set up, but on this one, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin adjusting all of this, changing it around and turning it into how I normally do things. Or at the very least, as close as I can get it. As you can see in the upper left hand corner, we have a whole crud ton of money, so there's no real worry about that. The main goal I want with this episode is, of course, to finish off this cavern completely and then to set up some rudimentary gold production. That's my plan. It shouldn't take us too long. Hopefully it won't be as long as the first episode was, or it will be. I have no idea how long this is going to take. All we can do is just try it out, see how it happens. Alrighty. Oh, this is still going. I thought we were already done. Okay, well, now we are. Okay, so, first, we get rid of all of this. I won't get rid of this stuff because, well, to be honest, this is already a fairly good setup. At least for as far as I'm concerned. There are still a few more things that I'd like to do with it. The main one being down here. Hoppers. I'd prefer to get this, the basic chutes as well, but that'll be something that'll have to happen in a bit. Won't be something that can happen right away. I will say there is a exciting little update that apparently came out. Apparently, just the other day, the developer had an update where they fixed the clogging issues for the sorters, for the bulk sorters, which is quite interesting. I'm going to see how that turns out. Of course, I'm not entirely sure whether or not it's absolutely fixed, but we can at least see what's going down. Okay, so now that we got money, now let's begin sorting. First, we're going to need, well, a polishing machine, blast furnace, and another ore crusher, as well as 2 auto miners for now. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, that's a very good question. Truth be told, how I normally do things is I just go with the flow. I really don't do things exactly hugely worrisome. I normally like to have a set line where most things funnel into, but I don't really do things absolutely. I don't plan things out entirely. I normally just go with what I think looks good and then call it good. So for this, we're just going to do that. Alright, so let's think about this. First, we know that all of the gemstones and such are going to be coming out of here, along with the ingots. That's fine, that's understandable. However, how are we going to deal with all the extra gemstones? I mean, all the extra stuff. Well, what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to run this stuff. Ooh, I can't. Hmm, at least not yet. Not yet, at least. Anyways, what I can do is this. There we go. Okay, so eventually I'm going to be having ingots and such all popping up over from this area. They're going to be jumping onto this belt and they're going to be going over here. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to more or less pop the gemstones and the ingots. I'm just going to have them pop onto this belt. That way, everything will just go and slide onto here. Like I said, I normally like to have everything on, well, roughly the same belt all the way through. So, since we're going to be doing this, toss this here and there. Okay, all good. So now, what'll happen is everything will come through here. And then we can just pop out our handy dandy polishing machine, which will polish all the gemstones and the ingots on up. And then we can add them to this line. Now this one is going to be a bit interesting. Actually, you know what? I won't have it go like that. I'm going to have them move this way. Because, yes, I'm going to move this stuff slightly differently. Yes, okay, so I'm going to take this one and I'm going to move it up. Now, in this game, verticality is something that you can just mess about with. So long as you got space above your head, you're good. Honestly, you don't even need space above your head. So long as there's enough space for the ingots and the ores to make their grand journey, you don't have to worry about anything. And there. Now we go over here, and we can turn this one on because it is purely just an iron node, basically the same as these two over here. So all it's going to do is just pump out iron ore into here. And that's great. That's awesome. An additional problem that we're going to be having, though, that will happen, is the fact that, well, there's going to be a problem with the ore here. The iron ore. You see, once you reach a certain point, you don't have to worry too much about ever overwhelming these crushers. Honestly speaking, these crushers, as far as I've known, you're never going to overwhelm them. No matter what you do. I mean, the only way you could really honestly overwhelm them is if you literally just threw a giant stack of stuff into it. That is the only way I can think of you're ever going to have any real problems with the crushers. The blast furnace, however, they're a bit different. They're a different story. The blast furnace are not going to be so easy to handle. Or not so easy to, well, are not so easy to use. I mean, they're easy to use, but they're definitely not going to be fun. That's why I always want to do something like this, where I have a double blast furnace. Because eventually, you're going to be making so much crushed whatever, iron, copper, gold, that eventually one blast furnace isn't going to be able to keep up. And it will begin stacking up, stacking up, stacking up, because it takes a bit for it to actually go and start, well, smelting the iron. It takes a bit for the iron to pop out. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, honestly, you really just have to do your best to try to figure it out. Luckily, there are ways around this. And the main method I like to use is just to double up your blast furnaces. I'll turn everything on and we'll see what we can do. We'll see what's going to happen. Okay. Should be able just to turn this on, turn this one on, and turn this one over here on. Okay, now the pure irons are all going. Now, you're not going to see, like I said, you're not going to see an immediate problem. You're not going to be seeing any immediate problems. The problems will come later on. That I can guarantee you on that one. But for right now, nothing to worry about. That being said, just because you don't have to worry about it right now doesn't mean that it's something that's going to be good to just ignore. Alright, there we go. Now, that mine and that mine are the same as the mine way over here in this corner. This mine right here is almost exactly similar to this one and the other one. They produce iron and coal with a gemstone. Problem with all of this is, obviously, what are we going to do with all this crap? Well, the answer is we're eventually going to get to the point where we're going to be moving the coal somewhere else. Yeah, see? Right here. This is what I mean by you're going to eventually run into throughput issues. It takes a little bit for the iron to be filled up into a ingot. And as you can see, you can still put stuff in there while it's filling up. And it can fill up more. Yeah, you see, it's slowly filling up more and more and more and more. It's going real slow. With how it is right now, it won't overflow with how many mines we have. It won't overflow all on its own. Not really, anyways. Because it'll be able to fill up faster than the, it'll be able to cast, there we go, cast faster than it be able to fill up the smeltery top. But that's only because of the few mines we have right now. I haven't even turned this one way up here on yet. We're going to be having more iron. More iron is going to be coming by soonish. And eventually that's going to do some issues. If we don't figure out some way to double it. If we don't figure out how to, if we don't separate it. Because as you can see right now, it's doing a good job of casting it real quick, but as time goes on, it will become harder and harder for just one to keep up with the throughput of several mines. And if you do decide to go and use the auto miners from what I talked about earlier, from what I talked about first episode, you'll find yourself in a bit of a pickle. Because those things will even more so be, well, making more ores, obviously. That's the whole point of them. So what's the game plan? Simple. The doubling. Because yeah, see, right here. It's overfilling now. This is why you want to double it. This right here is why you want to double it. I mean, we haven't even changed it so that one and that one are having their iron going to it yet. And it's already overflowing. That is incredibly dangerous and difficult. Thankfully, though, we can be able to fix that. And how can we fix that? Simple. We come up here, or go somewhere. Hang on. I gotta find it. Ah, here we are. Yes. We go into here, this T-junction conveyor. Basically, once we get this, we'll be able to split them off into those two. How can we do it before then? I'm sure there's a way, but personally speaking, I'm not going to worry about it too much. What I am going to do is I'm going to solve a quest that we have, which is to deposit iron ingots. Like I said, I'm going to be making ingots and such like that eventually, so why not start right now? And that starts with, of course, laying out the groundwork for making the copper ingots. Which isn't that difficult, honestly speaking here. Just takes a bit of time. We'll swap you out. Put you there. And then we put a grinder right there. Crusher, sorry, crusher. And then we put that, like that. And with that, we can just add them onto here. And realistically speaking here, I don't need to go and have the polisher right here, honestly. Because see, this is why I don't really plan too much stuff out, is because of stuff like this. Right now, I didn't realize how close the blast furnace would be to this track. Or that would be way the heck up here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to move this polisher up to here. Obviously, I'll have to move this line a little bit further up, but of course, no problem with that. This is only a temporary line after all. I'm not keeping this line. So I can just do that while I'm making more money. And see, even after I turned everything off, it still took a while for everything to shut down, especially the iron ingots, the ingots maker. That's because it takes a bit for it to go through the backlog if you have quite a few of it. So just be aware of that when you are doing stuff like this, when you're moving stuff around. Just be cautious about that. Alrighty, and now on to this. I'm sure you're already wondering, Alan, what on earth are you going to be doing with all the extra stuff? What will you be doing with the various parts that you're going to be messing about with? How will you be getting the coal and other such items somewhere better? Well, that's a very simple question and a very easy one to answer. Verticality, my dear friends, verticality. Just do this, do this, do this, and just basically run this all the way over. And I'm sure you can already tell where I'm going with this. All the way over to this right over here. And right there. Now, all of these various coal such will begin to go and drop over there. The iron will be separated off, of course, as we already did, and the coal will be sent through. Now, what oh what are we going to do with the coal? Because obviously we can't just have the coal just... I mean, we can just keep having the coal be sent directly to there, but as I discussed in the first episode, we got a better way to deal with that. Shakers. Shakers are very handy because most of the time all it does is basically just either break the coal down into little crushed pieces or just get rid of it completely, just destroys it. But sometimes it'll give you a ruby, and that's a gemstone that is, of course, as you can figure, very expensive, especially if you get it polished. So, what do we do? How do we do all that? Well, I usually run a line. But first, we get our copper going. In case you're wondering why I'm standing here, it's so I can grab this stuff and really quickly run it over here. Ah, hey, neato. Okay, and with that, the copper ingots will be set up. So they'll eventually go and start working their way through everything too. Alright, now then, we've got that set up. So, in order to go and get our shaker, we need to do a bit of mining. Why do we need to do a bit of mining? Well, that's very simple. We need to gather resources. Huh. That's odd. Usually there's a couple of nodes over here. In fact, I intentionally didn't even go over here to collect them. Oh, that's unfortunate. It appears the nodes have all been... yeah, have all been vanished due to the, yeah. due to the update. Well, that's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. Well, in that case, the only thing I can do then, in order to solve the scavenger hunt, is to do it in a slightly cheaty way. And that's to go over here, leave this on, and just let the gold ore basically fall onto the ground here, and I can collect it later. Oh hey, there's some copper. Yeah, bad thing about early access games. Sometimes stuff like that happens, new update suddenly pops up and suddenly you're kind of, well, not screwed, but have to do things in a slightly different way than you had planned. It would have been so much easier and quicker to simply just be able to whip out my pickaxe, mine, 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 mine. But, oh well, it is what it is. This is still not bad. I can still handle this. It's just going to be more walking back and forth and slightly more, how should I put this? Slower for you guys. A little bit more boring. Or maybe not so boring, You never know. Okay, how many we got here? 6? That should be more than enough. That should be more than enough gold ore. And of course, as you can probably figure, since we now got gold and we need to get copper for the scavenger hunt, obviously what I'm going to do next is to go to a copper node. And obviously, since I played this game quite a bit, I know where all the nodes are. So no need to worry. Pure copper? Yes, pure copper. One major bad part about such things is, well, stuff like this. This place, as far as I remember, used to have a whole crud ton of different different ore chunks. The, what do we call them? The bits of ore that you mine with the pickaxe. Whatever we want to call them. It'd have quite a few of them, and you'd be able to get resources. And actually, that's kind of usually a good thing to do that way. But, unfortunately, because of the update, it messed up a little bit. I'm not too worried about that. It's what happens. But just because it's what happens doesn't mean I have to like it. Okay, that should be enough copper. And with this, that scavenger hunt, which would usually not take that long, will be completed. In fact, if you look up above the scavenger hunt, you can see that the copper ingots that we set up are already doing a pretty decent job of being made. And see how they look before they go through the polishing machine and then after. This is why you want to do the polishing machine. So much more money's coming in. So much more money. And scavenger hunt is done, which means we've got more. Aha, yes, we have more quests to do. And, like I said, there's that. So, we of course now have the shaker table unlocked. So, I will of course go and buy that. We will plop out the shaker table right. Let's do it here. And you'll see that it has a little fancy, weird thing to it. If I take it back, look at you'll see the green arrow and a yellow arrow. Obviously, the yellow arrow is just because, it would be easier to see through the green outline of the machine itself. The arrows, as you can see, are pointing towards how it goes in and out. It goes in up top, and then it comes out underneath, right down here. Very, very unique. Very interesting. I always thought that was kind of neat when I first put down my first shaker. Of course, since it's like that, you're going to need to do something like this, but that's fine. Honestly, we were already planning on doing something similar to that, so nothing to be worried about. Now, how, oh how, do we mess about with the shaker? Well, that one is actually rather... sorry. Rather easy to handle. What I normally do is I just go get rid of all this stuff. I put it like so. And then there. And with this, we do that. You'll see that it comes over here. Shake, 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 shake. And you see, 2 coal went in, but only 1 crushed coal came out. That's kind of that's kind of what's going to happen. That's pretty much the extent of that's pretty much how it's going to be. You're not going to see a lot of you're not going to see a lot of rubies or diamonds or other such gemstones coming out of there. I'm sorry to have to burst your bubble, but yeah, it's not like it's going to be a huge whole crud ton of it. There will be if basically, if you basically just unload a whole crud ton of coal into it. Yeah, sure, definitely. But you're not going to see a huge return, a huge amount of rubies, realistically. For the amount of coal you're going to be tossing in here, you're not going to be seeing a lot of rubies. However, what you will be seeing is a lot of these crushed coal. Now, like I said, crushed coal, I don't think it does anything into here. I think all it does is just vanish, like the coal does. I don't think it creates any rubies or anything like that. However, honestly speaking, I don't really care to separate off. Now you can, but I'm not going to personally. Just because I don't really feel like it. I don't really feel the need to. So I'm not going to. You can, I'm not going to. I just don't feel like it. Now, since I've gotten that all sorted, I obviously am going to go and separate all the pure ores off onto, well, the belt here. So that way we can get as many rubies as possible. And the first stage of that is, of course, to simply start separating them off. There we go. Okay. So, first, obviously, what comes out of here is going to be some iron. And crushed iron. See right there? It's filling up. Oop, crud. You gotta be careful with these. Physics engines can be pretty harsh. Yeah, you see, it's starting to fill up, which is why it's a good idea to maybe go and prioritize getting that splitter as soon as possible. Just maybe. Just maybe. But we'll continue with what I'm doing here. So, we've taken care of the iron that's going to be coming out of there. So now we take care of the coal. And the coal is actually pretty easy. Grab this. Bring it on over here. Turn that one on so we can get a crushed coal from the shaker to add to that. And once we do that, the only things that should come out of these lines, should be any ingots we decide to put onto this central belt. Which I can assure you I'm going to be doing. I will be doing that eventually. For right now, it's nothing too serious. And there. Okay. So, that's now taken care of. Turn that on. Ah! It appears a ruby managed to sneak through while I wasn't looking. If you look at the red gem quest, yeah, managed to make a ruby out of this. Interesting. Very interesting. Now, while we're talking about all this splitting up stuff, the reason what I normally do with the crushed coal that comes out of the shaker, I usually just send it off to basically be turned into junk ingots, which is the only type of ingot that the coal can make. Junk ingots. Which, ironically enough, or weirdly enough, I guess I should say, you can also make junk ingots out of every other ingot too. Every other ore too. You just have to mix ores. Junk ores are not very are not very valuable. They're junk for a reason. But they're more expensive, more valuable than just pure crushed ore, which is why I normally siphon it off to do that. And of course, I like to have my own little stash right here for when I do need to make a new bit of a new sorter with gemstones. I already explained my reasoning in the last video for that. And now we only need to wait for one more copper ingot in order to go and, well, get two more research tickets. Oh, oh, you see that redstone? That's the ruby. And speaking of which, it probably wouldn't be too bad of an idea to get a polishing machine. Like I said, these things are just very much well worth your time and energy to get. The only problem is, the reason why I'm not going to put it down right now is purely because of how it just wouldn't help me out too much. At least not with crushed coal as it is. The crushed coal would basically just make it too bad. Would just be too would just make the polishing machines dirty, filthy. And I had considered siphoning off the rubies, but of course I realized how stupid that really is. See, that's the look we're going for. There we go. And now our place is set up. The crust goes over there to be tossed into there. And the rubies continue forward to be turned into polished rubies, which will become very, very, very expensive. And we just unlocked something new, the rolling mill, which turns ingots into plates, as well as giving us two research tickets, which will allow us to get the T-Junk conveyor. That is the exact kind of thing that I want. That is exactly what I need, actually. So we come back into here, go to conveyors, buy two of these, or however many you want to buy. Your choice. Turn off all auto miners. Now, the real question. How do we set it up? Well, you can probably already see how I'm doing it. Just need to wait for the ores to get through and have an open space to do it. And there you have it. Now we can turn everything on, and what should happen is it's no longer going to be a not really a difficult spot. No longer will it overflow. Now it's actually going to be pretty dang handy. Not to mention, we basically just doubled our iron smelting. Because, well, as you see down there, they just made 2 iron ingots at the same time. If we can when we feed the smelteries so incredibly much, it'll be great, incredible, amazing. Instead of overflowing, now they'll basically just pump out ingots. Now, this T-splitter is not my favorite, but it's a good starting point, obviously. It's a good starting point. A better one is going to be a smart T-splitter. That one is, of course, right here. This one is much better because it will basically keep both sides of the output equal, more or less. More or less. Obviously, it's not perfect. But then again, it doesn't have to be. It'd be a lot better than this one where it just does by vibes, basically. Right now, it's not much of a problem, but for some of the future mines, it will become a problem. So, better to go and nip that in the bud as soon as possible. So, now, what are we doing? Well, simple. We're just finishing off this cavern. As you may or may not have already figured out, we have almost all of the mines in this central cavern set up. The only mines left are actually the one that I'm currently messing about with. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, you're going to want to be careful about doing stuff like this. About having your conveyor belts be like this. Having them so far up above another conveyor belt. The problem with that is sometimes they will indeed go and fall through. Like fall through the conveyor belt and even clip through the floor. It's happened more times to me than not. So just giving you a fair warning, that is something that very realistically and reasonably can indeed happen. So be careful when you're doing stuff like that. Verticality can be both your friend and your enemy in this game. Alrighty. So, we have, of course, done exactly what I set out to do. We managed to go set up our entire chamber here, and it's set up in such a way that there are no pure ores other than the crushed coal that is currently going into the box. We are maximizing our value, more or less, of everything that we can get our hands on. So, what's the goal? Simple. We move on. We expand outward. And that's what we're going to do. We are going to go and we are going to grab the gold, like I said. And you've already seen where we're going to set up our mines, too, I should mention. Right here and right over here. This one especially is going to be very helpful. There are more spots, but these two spots are my main starting spot. They're what I use to actually get this whole gold mine situation up and running immediately. Ooh, I forgot a sorter. That will be very, very, very handy to have because, well, otherwise you're just going to be smashing out. Oh, see, did you see that? A piece of coal or something. Aha, right there. This. This is a junk bar. That is a junk bar. So what we do is we go over here. We find out why the heck there are junk bars coming out of here. And if you would have noticed, it's coming from that side. Ah, I see. Yep. I see what's going down. Okay, so yes, I get what's going down now. Alright, so the coal coming from up there is was of course feeding into the main line of iron. I did not foresee that being a problem, so I didn't realize that that was going to be a problem. My dumb butt now learned. There will be coal coming out of there. Coal that must be dealt with. And, obviously, like I said, this is what the rollers look like when they're dirty. You don't want to send ores through here because they just automatically dirty it. You don't want to do that. You're basically just screwing yourself over by doing so. So just go over here, swap out one of these, and by the way, you can just do that. You don't need to have supports under it. If you don't like those supports, you can actually get something to get rid of that. So over here in tools, yes, and it is the support wrench. I believe the support wrench is right here. If you don't like the supports that are underneath your belts and such, you can use this to get rid of them, and it won't do any damage. It's just purely a cosmetic thing. Me personally, I'm not too worried about it, so I'm not going to get worried about it. But if you are, feel free. Okay. Now, these. Obviously, you don't want to just chuck them away because they have value irregardless, but you don't want to just leave them be either. And you also don't want to just turn all of your mines on immediately, because while you can, I would advise highly against that. I can assure you it will not end well if you do. It will not end well if you do. You will just have a mess when you get back over to where you were working previously. Especially if you're like me, who sets up the mines first and then sets up the conveyors, the everything. Trust me, you're going to want to just be smart about this and not just turn everything on immediately. You can go through manually and turn them all on if you want, but I'm lazy. I'm not going to. If you want to maximize your profits, per minute or whatever, yeah, you'd probably want to go and not set up the mines right away and be able to have the factory running constantly, but I'm not worried about that. I'm not somebody who's really profit focused. Alrighty, and there. And there. There, there, there. There, there, there. Oh, hey, I don't need that. Cool. There. Now, I will give you a bit of a warning. You are probably going to need to change this around eventually. But as of right now, this should be good for a good starting base. We're not quite in the mid game, but we're dang close. I would say, as far as the number of mines that we currently have, I'd say we're late early game, maybe getting close to mid game. Getting close to the mid game. We're not quite there yet, but we're dang close. We've got polishing machines, we got polished ingots and gemstones now coming out our wazoo, and we have every single type of ore being smelted into irons. Obviously, as you saw earlier with the roller machine, you can make plates out of pretty much all of it. You can make ingots into plates, and there's a lot more to be done with the ingots too. You can turn them into rods, and then you could turn those plates into a pipe. And those pipes are actually the most expensive form, I believe. which, all in all, gotta say, not bad. Not bad at all. I think I am going to swap a little something something around, though. As you can see, we're making gold, but they're not polished. So, we're just going to swap it around so it comes in after the polishing machine. I mean, before the polishing machine. And now, we're making polished gold bars. And that in and of itself is, I think, where we're going to leave this episode. Now, a few of you might be a little bit worried about how dark it looks. Obviously, you don't have to. If you're willing to spend the money, you can just buy these lampposts that'll basically brighten everything up. You can take them anywhere. They basically act as lanterns, only they, stay somewhere. They stay wherever the heck you want to put them. So if, say, there's a certain spot that looks a little bit too dark for you, you just bring them on over, plop it down, and boom, now it's a little bit brighter. You don't have to worry too much about doing this. There's really no real need to do that. You're not going to come across anything scary or anything like that in this game. But if you want it to be a little bit, want your mind to be a little bit brighter, you're more than welcome to do that. So, I have been Alan. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a good day. Sayonara.